Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Esquire Coaching Radio, where we help attorneys achieve unparalleled personal and professional success. And now here's your host, Ann Jenrette Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Esquire Coaching Radio Show. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. As you know, Esquire Coaching is a national coaching and consulting firm that's dedicated to empowering lawyers to happily succeed in the business of law. And to that end, we discuss the full range of topics, from building business to getting a job to work-life balance and everything in between. Today, we have a very special guest who's going to talk to us about balancing your life by attending to your body. So most of us know that in this workaholic society that values material success, financial accomplishment, and other signs of work-related achievement, you know, it might be a little bit difficult to tend to our relationships and our health. And in fact, there's plenty of studies that show that many Americans don't even use their vacation time to which they're entitled. In fact, I don't know, many of you may have even seen that commercial that's on with some little kids saying, it's a paid vacation. But anyway, I want to tell you about our guest, our wonderful guest who's going to talk to us about this very important issue. Carolyn Rosenblatt is an RN, an attorney, and a consultant on aging issues for families with older loved ones and those who work with elders. She has spent 10 years as a nurse, mainly working with elders and their families. Her 27-year legal career involved representing individuals who were injured, sometimes as a result of nursing home neglect. She founded AgingParents.com in 2007 together with her husband, Dr. Mikol Davis, a psychologist focused on aging issues. She also focused on healthy aging and leads by example by taking up things such as a triathlon at age 63 and pursuing it to the present. She has been happily married for 32 years and has 2 grown children. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Anne.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. I love this topic. I think it is essential. And, you know, I've said this on our radio show before, but believe it or not, lawyers have the highest rates of depression. We're 3.6 times more likely to be depressed than non-lawyers. We have high rates of suicide, and, you know, the statistics are rampant about drug, alcohol, you know, substance abuse, just to cope. So this topic about health, well-being, and balance is it's perfect. I'm very delighted to have you here.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite subjects, and I've always noticed that lawyers seem to favor their intellectual capabilities over their physical capabilities and pay more attention to what's going on in their brains than they do about what's going on in their bodies. So it's good for me to be talking about it, too.
Excellent. And, you know, you live what you preach, right? You are someone that's an example of a healthy professional. So talk to us about how you've gotten to that point.
Well, I always, you know, coming from nursing, I always was interested in health, and I realized back in those days that I couldn't be talking to my clients all over the place because I was a home health nurse and trying to address their health issues. I couldn't do that and not be paying attention to my own health. It really would have felt hypocritical. So I really stayed focused on trying to be an example for them. And as I got into the law, I noticed, sort of to my shock, that people were not eating good food, they weren't exercising, they complained about not getting enough sleep, and worse yet, they would brag that they never took a vacation. And I thought it sounded horrible. So I just wanted to be different. I always did something. I walked every day or almost every day as much as I possibly could. I'd occasionally go to the gym. I'd do a little bike ride now and then, go skiing when it was winter. But, you know, I was never an athlete. And when I retired from the practice of law, from a litigation practice, and had an opportunity to try something completely different, which is a multi-sport endurance thing, the short distance, mind you, I got hooked because it just felt so incredible to be able to do things I had never done before and to feel more fit, stronger, and have better endurance than I did when I was 30. And I'm still doing it.
That's amazing. I love that. You know, what I do, I'm inspired. I've never done a triathlon. I never even contemplated doing a triathlon, so you truly have inspired me.
Well, I hadn't thought about it either, because you don't normally think of yourself as an athlete unless you've maybe done that all your life. When I grew up, girls were not even allowed on the track, okay? There was no running. You couldn't do those things. It was hard to get places. I didn't have transportation, so I didn't pursue what few, very limited opportunities existed. And in a way, this is sort of like the nana to all that, you know. Women have come of age, Title IX passed. I have a coach, I have a team, I work out with other women, you know, several times a week, and we do these events together, and it's just the most delightful feeling to be able to say, wow, you know, I can do this, and I'm 66 years old, I can do this. It really feels good.
That is fantastic. And, you know, I know that your words are serving as inspiration to our listeners as well. So I'm really, you know, thank you for sharing that. What do you think are some of the biggest obstacles that lawyers have to maintaining a healthy lifestyle and still being able to balance the professional requirements as well?
Well, let's not kid ourselves. Most lawyering is a very stressful kind of work. There's pressure, there are deadlines, there are clients that are giving you a hard time. If you're a litigator, you've got court deadlines always constantly shifting and changing and crowding on your calendar. It's not easy. And I think the most common complaint people have, and the reason they say they don't exercise, is because they say they don't have time. Of course, it's like anything else. A lawyer who really is serious about trying to maintain good health and think in terms of long-term prevention of disease or just losing your abilities is going to find a little bit of time every day to do something, or most days. You know, it can't be perfect usually, but, you know, there is a way to put things in your house like an exercise bike, which I had when my kids were growing up. I would get on that thing at 10 o'clock at night and pedal away while I watched the news for half an hour, and that's as good as it got. But it's better than not doing anything. There are ways to work it out so that you have something available to you, whatever your lifestyle is. If it means not eating lunch at your desk or going to a restaurant and taking a brisk walk for however many blocks you can, if the weather is bad, going to the local mall and doing mall walking, I'm saying there is a way to fit this in somehow, even if it's just a little bit, 20 minutes a day. That will keep you going until your calendar opens up or you have more time or your kids are grown or you retire or something shifts where you can put more time into it. And then weekends. I think it's really important to use both days of the weekend to get some physical activity in. It's a habit, that's all. It's just a habit and something you have to value if you want to do it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And, you know, one thing that occurred to me as you were talking is that there are plenty of attorneys out there and non-attorneys who have the exercise bike or the treadmill at home, and it's essentially become an extended laundry basket, right? So what was it that helped you stay motivated to say, okay, it's 10 o'clock at night, but I'm going to get on that treadmill?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there were certainly times where I put on my running shoes and went to do it, and then I fell asleep on the couch. I mean, I'm human. I didn't always make it. But I think what motivated me was a little bit complicated. I had grown up with an abusive sibling who always told me how fat I was. And I wasn't really fat, but that was the mindset. And it was so hard to overcome that in my high school and college years. And when I had gotten to the point where I trusted that I wasn't fat, I didn't ever want to lose the image of having overcome that past. It was so damaging. And trying to embrace, you know, that your body is okay, that it's not fat and ugly. I mean, women especially, we always think we're too fat, right? Does this make my butt look too big? You know, does this make me look fat? We ask ourselves that. And I think part of it was the drive to escape that negative mindset. The other part of it was that I had seen elders really differ in how they aged, and I had worked with hundreds of them. The ones who were doing the best usually did something to take care of themselves. This is not luck, aging well. It's at least 70% lifestyle, which means do you exercise, eat right, get enough sleep, all that stuff. So it was a combination of those things that motivated me and has kept me motivated.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Now, here's the thing. What advice would you offer to someone who's a little bit more mature in their career and thinking about retirement or thinking about possibly cutting back on their practice? What can they do to ensure that staying healthy is a priority and that they're prepped for it for retirement?
Right. Well, to me, now's your chance. You've worked hard for many years. You're finally getting to a place where that's going to change. Maybe you're just cutting back on your practice or not taking as many new clients, or maybe you're just giving up the practice of law altogether. Now is your chance to really focus on health because it tends to take a back seat and it tends to not be a priority. We've got clients to serve, we've got deadlines to meet, we've got fees to earn. It's all this pressure all the time, and our health isn't at the front of our consciousness. But when you retire or change the way you've worked in the past, you have a new opportunity. You can turn over a new leaf. You can become your own healthier person with yourself as the coach saying, all right, maybe you haven't got on that dusty old bike you have in the garage with flat tires for years, but you can get it tuned up and fixed and put new tires on it and just try it. Just try it. Experimenting with new things keeps you young. And that's what I think retirement offers people, a chance to stay young or feel young or be younger. You could really sort of turn back the clock on certain things with the proper health habits.
Totally right. And, I really hope that our listeners get this message, because one thing that we see over and over again within the legal community is that many lawyers have their identity based in their career. And so they're either not willing to retire. They're literally, I know at least one or two attorneys personally who are working well into their 80s because that is their sense of who they are. Right. And what you're offering right now is a way for them to create a life after retirement, create a vision of what's possible. And it could be something, that pertains to their well-being. Plus, it'll keep their mind sharp and active.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, and keep you from deteriorating physically if you're really willing to put some time and energy into your health. And that's mental and spiritual and physical. It's not just your body. But it does take a determination and a desire to change. And I think that's what's hard for a lot of people, because the practice of law gets sort of comfortable after a while. You know what to do. Even if it's stressful, you've got it. You know what the skills are. You can make it happen. You're good at your job. But giving up that complete comfort and making room for something that isn't comfortable, making changes that aren't comfortable, that's where we grow.
Absolutely. And, you have had some experience in your own life. And as I mentioned when I introduced you, you've been married for 32 years and you've raised 2 children while having a successful litigation practice. And I know a litigator's schedule. It's demanding. What do you think was the most important thing that helped you to, enjoy a happy marriage and maintain that type of work-life balance?
Well, it's a little bit complex, and there's no one thing, but I'll say, first of all, I married the right guy, okay? I definitely married the right guy. My husband is a psychologist, as you mentioned when you introduced me, and he has been a wonderful support, a great outlet for me. Whenever I was stressed out or feeling doubt or fear, or I would sit on the couch and just cry because I had too many cases going at once, and I was terrified I wouldn't get it all done, he was incredible. And he still is. So having a really good partner makes a huge difference. He also took over some of the management of my law practice. He did a lot of the bookkeeping. He would run to the bank. He would buy the supplies. He would help train my staff if there was some technology thing. He's really good at that. I'm not. So that saved me time. And in essence, really all I had to do was bring in the cases, work them, and make the money. And a lot of the other part, the support part, he helped me do. So that was a huge, huge help. I think it's really important for people in solo practice, as I was, if you get big enough and you can grit your teeth and face payroll, delegate, get help. I started out with a paralegal / secretary, just an admin person, and that helped. And as the practice grew, I had to hire a lawyer to help me. And I always had, for most of those years, I had a lawyer full-time. That made a very big difference because I didn't tell anybody this, but when my kids were little, I worked 4 days a week. And I had my staff trained to say, I'm sorry, she's booked that day's not available for depositions, that day's not available. Or if we're calendaring, I would just sort of block off the Fridays that I took off and not make myself open to things. Now, when the court set stuff, of course, I had no choice. I never mentioned this to anybody, what I was doing, because, of course, they would have jumped all over it and scheduled everything had they known. They would have been really jealous. Really jealous. But the truth is, I was very efficient at my job, and I had a lot of help, and so I got 5 days' worth of work done in 4. Then I could go to my kids' schools. I could have lunch with my husband. I could do whatever I could manage to have a good time. 80% of the time, I would say, I managed to have Fridays off. And that worked great for me. Just great.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And I love that you were able to structure it as a solo. Do you have any advice for, let's say, the associates or the other, maybe even a junior or non-equity partner at a larger law firm? Do you have any suggestions for them on, how they might be able to incorporate some work-life balance, even if they don't take the time off like what you were able to do as a solo?
Yeah, you've got to demand it. The workplace will never change. It is besieged with inertia, The old model of partners, dumping everything on the younger associates and the hours piling up and you have to meet this number and so on. I didn't work by the hour. I had a contingent fee practice, which takes a certain degree of nerve. But for those who are slaves to the hourly billing, which is most lawyers, I think, you have to really demand changes. If you don't demand changes and speak up for making them, nothing is going to get better for you. The people at the top want you to be a slave, I'm sorry to say. That's why I advocate going on your own if you really like balance. If you're not comfortable with that and you don't have the sort of personality to go out and get business, then stay in the structure of a firm, but ask for what you want. You deserve to have a better work-life balance than the old model of 80-hour work weeks. Can't be involved in their lives. Things will fall apart somewhere, and, it might be with you first. So I think if we speak up and have the courage to face that we are not just workaholic slaves for somebody, we have a far better opportunity to reshape the workplace for ourselves as lawyers.
And we're actually starting to see this within the law firm environment. What's fascinating and encouraging to me is that the young folks, the millennials, are coming in and doing exactly what you're saying. They're asking for what they want. They're saying, doesn't matter that I'm a male, I still want to be a good father, and I want parental leave, and time to go to my kids' soccer games and so forth. And the challenge though is then we have the baby boomers who are starting to retire, or they're the ones that have they're the named partners, or the ones that have most of the business. We have the Gen Xers who are more in this mid-level management area, and then the millennials who are saying, okay, I'm taking a stand. But I almost feel like in some ways, while this is encouraging, there might be a little bit more pressure put on both the boomers and the Gen Xers to make up for the slack. I think that's also part of the reason why there's some resentment at times, that we keep hearing about. But, there are many baby boomers out there, and I know that you're one of them. What are challenges that you think that attorneys who are either in Gen X, middle age, or baby boomers are facing as they're getting closer toward retirement years?
I think for all of us, looking to the future, retirement is not what it used to be. People are living longer. Longevity in this country has increased to levels that have never existed before in human history. So instead of retiring at 60 or 65 and living for 10 years, people are living 20 and 30 years. I had lunch today at a bar luncheon with a lawyer who is 98. He is still practicing law. And his daughter, who's
98?
Probably 98. Old Carl, he's got a walker, and he just, opened the car door and said, "Come on," to his daughter, who's also white-haired. And was she does his shopping now with him, she was telling me. But, this is a guy who's still productive. That's a model you can have. I'm sure he doesn't go at it full-time, but he probably goes to the office every day. On the other hand, there are people who say, I want to put in my time and do what I did, and I don't want to be practicing law when I'm 98. And that's fine. But you have to think about what you want your life to be like. How do you want it to be shaped? What skills or interests are you developing and cultivating now that can blossom later? If you don't have any structure in your life as you retire, and I've seen lots of people do this, they end up getting sick. They end up having problems.
Yeah.
They end up having their relationships fall apart if they're not prepared for having a different kind of relationship as a person who isn't working, or at least not working full-time at the big job. So it takes a lot of planning and a structure, a sense of community, and reestablishing a sense of purpose.
So much sense. And in fact, both my parents have retired, and I am watching them both deteriorate tremendously just because they have no plan B and have no interest in it. So it's terrible to watch, and I hope our listeners hear this. Now, I just want to remind our listeners that if you want to speak to Carol, if you have a question, now is the time to call in. Call 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line. That's 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line. While we're waiting for some callers to check in, I wanted to just touch upon something that occurred to me from reading your bio, and that's you did a lot of essentially elder care work and dealing with aging parents.
Yes.
Now, I know that this is an issue that is also prevalent within the legal career. You have the demands of your practice, the demands of business development or client development, the demands of maybe, children and now aging parents. What advice, if any, do you have for any of the attorneys that are listening that are in a similar type of predicament?
Mm-hmm. And, we're not any better at dealing with aging parents because we're lawyers than anybody else, really, because it's so fraught with emotion. I think it's important to not be in that situation where the cobbler's children have no shoes, the lawyer's parents have no legal documents. We have to,
yes.
We have to take leadership in the family, even if you don't get along with your siblings, even if you don't get along with that difficult parent. Got to make sure you've got at least the essentials, the durable power of attorney, so that there's somebody can deal with finances when your aging parent may be losing it, and a health care directive. We're assuming that someone's got the will and the trust going. But those other two, for some reason, I am seeing a lot of people in my consulting work who have not gotten that done. And it's dangerous because you end up having a parent who has these very insidious changes in memory. Then they've got dementia. Then it's too late for them to be signing anything. And there are more ugly fights over money than anything else I can think of when it comes to dealing with aging parents. So at least that's some protection. It's no guarantee that it'll go smoothly, but it is way better than not having anything. And, of course, you can get the forms off the Internet, the statutory power of attorney form. You can download free. Sorry for all of you estate planners, but, yes, it's better for people to do it yourself than not do anything, because I see over and over again people get stuck, then they end up having to go get a conservatorship. And, some of these can be avoided just by this piece of paper. It's not complicated. And then I think also besides having the paperwork is to have the money conversation. What are you going to do if you can't manage by yourself, Mom and Dad? What would happen if you needed some help? How would you pay for it? Because there are plenty of baby boomer-aged adults who are having to pitch in and support their aging parents because they run out of money. Big problem.
A difficult conversation. Admittedly, it can be a difficult conversation, but you nailed it on the head when you said we have to take leadership. If you want to have some modicum of control over the situation, then it's important to take some leadership. So excellent feedback there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is your third career.
Yes.
What caused you to want to keep working after having 27 years as a litigator and prior to that being a nurse?
Well, I am a person who likes to be productive, and I think a lot of lawyers are that way. We're used to having something to do. the idea of sitting around and, tending to plants all day or going off on trips, I did a lot of traveling when I was young and single. I've done some since I've been married with kids. The idea of spending all of my time traveling is not something that interests me very much. I love it where I live. I love being at my house. I love Marin County where I live, which is spectacularly beautiful. And it's hard to beat. So that was not something I wanted to spend my time doing. And I thought, I've amassed an awful lot of information that can be useful to other people. I see the practice of law, at least for me, as a service profession. I've had 2 of those, and why not find a way to make a hybrid out of those 2 sort of knowledge databases, if you will, and try to be of service even further. My own generation of boomers is struggling with aging issues, not only in themselves, just starting to emerge, but most especially with the generation ahead of us, our parents or even some very older grandparents. And I think that if I can be of help, that makes me happy. I enjoy working itself. I like coming to an office and having a place to be. I do a lot of writing. I was invited to have a blog on Forbes, so I made a blog called Aging Parents, and I write for that every week, writing some books, consulting with people individually, just very enjoyable. It's very peaceful for me. It's not that there isn't any stress at all. There is, because people getting in fights with each other is kind of nasty, and people's stories are people's stories are very sad. How the parents and child relationship or sibling relationships have just been ghastly, and that's stressful to have to encounter and address directly. But I'm able to do that and help people reduce the stress, alleviate some of the anxiety, and that makes me feel good. So I work because I like working, and I wanted to have something that I could do that would share a lot of things that I had to work hard to attain, the knowledge, the experience, which you can't get a substitute for, experience. So that's why I did it and why I'm still doing it and why I'll probably keep doing it.
I love it. And your commitment to service and also, frankly, your commitment to yourself to continue to reinvent yourself, to continue to, develop a new vision and a new goal that you want to accomplish it's fantastic, just really inspiring, and I'm so glad that you've been here.
Well, thank you.
Carolyn, how can our listeners reach you if they have a question that they'd like to ask or learn more about your work?
Sure. My website is agingparents.com. And if someone happens to be in the financial services field, I have a whole set of educational programs for them about aging, and that's aginginvestor.com. My phone number is 415-459-0413. That's 415-459-0413. And my email is clrosenblatt@gmail.com.
Fantastic. This was amazing. Do you have any final words of wisdom as we wrap up the show?
Sure. Just remember that we as lawyers are more than our brains and our legal acumen. We're people. We have hearts and minds and bodies, and we have to take care of all of those in order to live a happy life.
Oh, so well said. Listeners, if you just listen to Carolyn's advice, and I invite you to share your stories about balance, share what you want to aspire to do upon retirement. You can share them on our social media sites, all of which you can find right on our website, www.esquirecoaching.com. Next week, we will be talking with Guy Takalaki from Attorney Sync, and it's going to be a wonderful conversation. Until then, everyone, be well.